Welcome to the Book Club Life. I am so excited to bring you a brand new author to me, although she's been around. She's been making waves. One of her books won the Christy Book of the Year Award, and I've been hearing her name mentioned forever. So I was coming to the Mississippi River Readers Retreat, and I wanted to try a book by Amanda Dykes. So I picked up Yours is the Night, and let me tell you what, by the end of it, I was crying and my cats were coming to see what was up with me.
Sorry about that.
And it was so beautiful. It was poetic. It had fairy tale-esque qualities to it with a girl living in the forest, secluded in the forest, but also it had lots of World War I elements, which I was very intrigued about because I know a lot about World War II. I've read books, I've seen movies, but a lot less than World War I, other than just it was a war that happened in the time period. But my son recently went to go visit the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
Wow.
So this past year for school. And so it was perfect timing for me to read this book. And, I wouldn't bring her on if I didn't think he would love it too. So I wanted to publish this about a week away from Armistice Day.
Yes.
And I hope I said that right. I was worried about that.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
So Amanda, I don't know much about you other than that I was so impressed with your book. So for your first question, so when we do the Book Club Life, we basically have a book club with Amanda, the author, right here. So she gets to sit down with us, and I want you to listen to the end. We're going to have a spoiler edition that is only for some people, so you'll hear about that in the end. It's not a spoiler edition, but just like a small spoiler clip. But I'm not playing it on this video, so don't worry. I'm just going to tell you about it. But so when we do the Book Club Live, we're going to ask you some really good questions from the quotes and themes in your book, and then I'm going to ask you some just for fun questions at the end.
Sounds perfect.
So one of the quotes says, "This was what I'd been waiting for, a way to break out of this cycle, out of this gate, to do something that meant something." One of the characters said that, and that stuck out to me. I think we all have those moments. At least we hope for them. I know I've certainly had those moments. And, oh, by the way, here we are at night talking about Yours is the Night.
So
night
perfect.
is falling. We're looking out on a lake, or on the river, actually, I think part of the Mississippi River.
Yep.
And there's some woods behind us. So using that quote, will you tell us just how did you get into writing? I'm assuming that was a moment for you that you were meant
It was.
to.
Yes.
So tell us, how did you get started?
Well, writing it's kind of a funny almost dichotomy for me, because I feel and have felt for a long time like I was meant to do that, but also it requires a certain level of courage and vulnerability, and I would not call myself a courageous person, but I think sometimes God calls us to things that expand or invite us to trust him more and to step out in courage that we perhaps don't feel in and of ourselves.
Right.
And that's writing for me. And so I always thought I was partially perhaps made to be a writer. It was a very long journey getting there.
When did that start?
It started, over 10 years ago.
Okay. And how old are you now?
I'm 40 now.
Okay.
40 is great. I love it.
I'm 42. Yeah.
It's a good place to be. So it started, I wrote my first novel, I think I was 29 or 30. We have bugs with us tonight.
Yes.
And there are bugs on the cover, so it works. And I wrote my first novel kind of in secret, just trying to learn how to do it.
Is that Whose Waves These Are?
No, it's never been published. I have 2 that have never been published. I told you it's been a long journey.
Okay, good.
But that was a novel that I took to a writer's conference where I did meet my agent, and she very kindly offered to represent me there. And so, not really knowing how that process went, I thought, it's happening maybe by next year or the year after, I'll have a book out. But it was more like 5 years later before we actually had, it was a totally different book by then, entirely different novels, Whose Waves These Are, that we were pitching, totally different conference when doors started to open. And at that point, things started happening more quickly, and it just sort of went from there. But it was a long road. It was a long road of perseverance and learning. I love that we get to continue to learn, whether it's writing or anything else that we're called to. We never have to stop learning. And so that whole time it was a practice in learning to trust God more, and just ask him, like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Kind of every step of the way.
Just holding that out.
Exactly.
And seeing what he does with
Open hands.
it.
Yeah.
That's good. I love I mean, when I was first I've been writing for a while, and when I first started, I was like, I do not like the stories of it took you 7 books to get started because I'm working on my first one. But it's also encouraging because if your first doesn't make it, that doesn't mean that that's a no.
And for some people, it is their first. So be encouraged. That could be your story.
Anything is possible. Yeah. Okay. So the writing was so immersive. It was so good. I want to read another quote. Sometimes there's a dark so thick. Actually, before I do that, will you tell us a little bit about the book? I'm sorry. I told you the setting, but tell us just a little intro.
So you mentioned the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and that's kind of where this story began. I was so fascinated. I started to get on these research tangents, sometimes just for fun. And one time I got interested in something someone had said about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington National Cemetery. And I knew there was a lot of custom, a lot of tradition, a lot of painstaking care that the tomb guards go through. Everything is symbolic. If you've been there, the number of steps they take, the just everything they do, the placement of the gun. They never have the gun on their shoulder next to the tomb. They always have themselves between the gun and the tomb, because the soldier has already, the unknown soldiers who are there have already seen enough warfare. And I think that's kind of profoundly beautiful.
Yeah.
They take, it's 21 steps, because they take 21 steps one way and they do this turn. It's all symbolic of something, 21 steps the other way. And it's because that symbolizes the 21 gun salute that is done at soldiers' funerals. So anyway, I got very interested in where did this all start. It started with World War I. After World War I, America's not the only country to do it. Many of the other countries involved in the war have something similar. And I just thought, I would like to tell a story honoring these soldiers. I don't want to fictionalize the unknown soldiers because it is profound, because they're unknown. Like they are real people in there. I don't want to try and impose a fictional identity on
your author's note at the end. I thought that was very, I appreciated and liked that note.
Thank you. But I did think these are the types of people I would like to explore, and that's where the story kind of grew from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. So it does, but it's not all in war. A good chunk of it is, but you see the backstories of a lot of characters, actually. Yeah. That's one thing that impressed me about it was very multi-character, multifaceted. They each had such distinct personalities, from everything from just pull at your heart to make you laugh, and
I'm glad.
And
was
everything.
That George?
Yes, George made me laugh.
That story needed some comic relief, so that's where George came from.
So there's a quote in here. Sometimes there's a dark so thick, you just know that the God who made light with his own 2 hands, with just his words, is going to plunge right into that dark to find you. A mentor had told Matthew, one of the main characters, that in his youth, and he remembers it. Can you tell us of a time when it was dark for you and God plunged in and brought light into the darkness?
Yeah. There have been many times. And I will say there is no place too small that he won't do that. So we might think it has to be some great big thing. No, he's there in what the world might consider a small pain. It's if it's painful, he cares about it. He cares about us. He created us. Sometimes it is something very big. For me, we lost my father very suddenly several years ago. And many of us have lost somebody, and you know that grief is a very nuanced and unique road, and every day can look different, and some days it's one breath or one step at a time, and that is a way that God shows up for us. He helps us take that next breath. He helps us take that next step. When it feels so heavy, we don't know, how can I get through a day? He makes it smaller and says, take my hand, take one breath. I'm here. And then that's it. One step at a time. And so that was he was very faithful to me during that time.
That's good. So this is related to this. So maybe if you don't have one in particular, there is a quote that just, at the time it was said in the story, it was so meaningful. And the character said, "But it is not mine to change what has happened," she said. "I cannot. It is mine to walk through what will come." So can you tell and this is very similar to the other question, do you have a story where something happened and you couldn't change it and you just had to walk forward?
I do. And so here's what I'll do. I'll kind of, if it's okay, I'll kind of turn your
Yes.
question a little bit, because it is a question, it's a story that involves other people. It's not entirely mine to tell. So what I'll do is pull from that what I learned during that time is God is there. You know, these things happen to us that knock the wind out of us. Things happen to us that pull the rug out from under us and leave us disoriented or just completely undone. And there are things we can't undo. There are things we perhaps had no control over, things we don't know what to do with or how to make it better. It feels too big or impossible. And I will just say there is so much comfort for me the time that I'm thinking of. I don't mean to be cryptic, just trying to honor everybody involved.
I appreciate that, yes.
Where I had to really lean on this idea that God, it felt like he just infused it to my heart that I am going to use this. I being God, you know, I am going to use this. And it's going to be a long story, and you will just trust me in it. Just trust me in it. And because there are things that happen in our lives we can't change.
Right.
But he will use this, and he will show up, and he will make all things new, and he will bring beauty from ashes. And we can trust that. We can lean on it. It's such a strong truth that even when we don't know the form it will take, we know he will deliver it. So, so I'll turn your question just to offer that as encouragement to anyone out there who might be going through something like that.
So you just took it to the Lord, and he gave you that word, that assurance. And so you were able to just not know all the answers, not know exactly how, just say, okay, this is too heavy for me.
Yes.
It's yours.
Because sometimes we want all the answers, but they're not there right then. It's an invitation to, like you said, place it in his hands and then place ourselves in his hands and go from there.
And I think that what you said earlier applies as well with the big things and the small things, you know?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so a little bit related to that. Mira, the main character, her world is shaken when word comes to her home in the forest. And also you have these soldiers who are arriving that haven't been tested yet. And they're wanting to prepare them, the soldiers. And Mira is not prepared at all. It just, you know, war is upon her. Do you have... What's your wisdom about preparing young people, our children, for the harsh realities of the world and what could possibly happen, and just being prepared and knowledgeable that the world is not, you know, just all a sweet place. There is evil in the world. There are bad people, but without scaring them and traumatizing them. What are your thoughts on that?
I love that question because it is a hard world. It is a hard world. It's a broken world. If you guys hear something in the background, it's a train, which there is also a train in the book. So honestly, it's like the book's coming alive for us.
Soundtrack.
But back to your question, it is a broken world. And sometimes that can feel so heavy to us as we look at the youth in our lives or the kids in our lives. How can we equip them while also, you know, allowing them to be kids or youth? I feel that one thing we can do, this is something I'm passionate about, so I'll try not to go on too much, is help them learn to have eyes to see that this is also a beautiful world. And like you said, it's not sugarcoating it. We're not saying everything is sunshine and rainbows and unicorns or puppies, but we're saying, like, look at the sunset. We're looking over the river right now. We're looking at this beautiful sunset. It's different every single night for all of time. And it's painted with light and it's painted with clouds. And what are clouds? It's the water cycle. And it could be water that's been anywhere in the earth at any time. And so, not to get off on too much of a tangent, but to help people see wonder and majesty because of the majestic creator helps give a foundation that no matter what happens, whatever comes, there's someone who's greater, there's someone who's mightier, and he can do this and he can do anything, and he will not leave our side in the midst of whatever life comes. So we don't have to prepare or paint a picture for
every circumstance.
Every single circumstance. It's like, if you have a wonderful medicine that could treat 1 million diseases, you don't have to tell the patient about every single disease and give them fear. Instead, you can tell them about that medicine and say it's going to be okay.
That's beautiful.
You know?
My philosophy is very similar to that. I don't even know that I have a philosophy, but I just find myself doing it. Is I am here and I'm their protector, and so I can decide as their God-given protector. You know, God gave me these children and my husband. what they need to be prepared for at what stage of life.
Exactly.
And to have a plan in place if something ever happened to us, then that would go to someone else. And then, so just age by age, we do prepare them for different things and just what to be aware of. And maybe I'm a little bit more on the prepared side. But
I think that's good because God equips you and he'll nudge you to know like what to say when.
Yes.
He leads us for what's right for each kid, each person.
Yes, he does.
And he's faithful in that.
Okay, let's see here. So, okay, this is kind of just a fun question. We've had a couple little heavier ones, but this is just a little funny moment that I totally identified with. So they're in war and they haven't had good food, and there's one character in particular that really misses his good food. And so this is another character dealing with him. I dug in my haversack and shoved a carrot at him. So much better than souffle, he said, and snapped off a big bite of the carrot, chomping with an incorrigible grimace and prodigious volume. And so that just made me laugh because I could see myself being like, this is so delicious on this thing I'm trying to psych myself up that I'm really loving it, because it does taste a little bit better if you have a really forceful, good attitude about it.
Yep.
So what is something that you have had to pump yourself up for that is a task or a duty that you have that you're just like, okay, we can do this?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I mean, there's the typical things like dishes or laundry or, but I think the thing that comes to mind most, especially since we're talking about writing, is writing first drafts. And it's just interesting because there are things I love about writing first drafts: the possibility, the brainstorming, the research.
Do you plot everything, or
I plot the main things?
Okay.
And sometimes they change as I go.
Okay.
But actually sitting down and writing it, like getting it from idea to paper, sometimes feels like pulling teeth for me.
Yeah.
And you can't get the story out. I love story. I love that I get to do this, but I can't offer this to readers or be a part of story making if I don't sit down and write the first draft, even if I think it's terrible, or even if it actually is terrible, which sometimes happens.
Just put down the terrible, then you can massage it and cut out the really terrible stuff and add in some really good stuff. Exactly.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. Good writing advice there too. Okay, so we're going to do the rapid fire round next. And then after that, a link in the show notes and on the blog post that goes with this. There's a little place where you can go on and be a patron of the show. And that just helps me pay my virtual assistant to do the hard things for me so that I have time to do all the things. And so if you would like to be a patron of the show, one of the benefits that you get is you get the spoiler edition question. So I'm going to ask, and you definitely want to read the book before you click on that spoiler episode, because otherwise it will it'll spoil it for you. So don't be spoiled. Read the book. Be a patron of the show if you'd like. And then you get the extra question. But for everyone, here we go, rapid fire.
Okay.
What is your favorite food?
I love Mexican food.
Okay, so do I. Always good. What advice would you give yourself from your teen year, if you could go back to your teen years? I
was a very timid and fearful person. And so I would just say to myself, it's going to be okay. I would also tell myself, because I had a superpower for being able to imagine the worst possible thing that could happen in any given circumstance, I would tell myself, this could be a God-given gift of creativity that you're misapplying. So learn to trust him and ask him what to do with that.
That's good.
And I think it would change a lot of things about
I
how
have
I
that
live
same
life.
thing. I'm like, be prepared.
Yep.
It probably will go right, but anything is possible.
Right.
What are you working on now, and where can people find you?
AmandaDykes.com is where and Instagram. Those are the two main places that I am also on Facebook, but more on Instagram. I have a newsletter that I send out monthly, a wonderful newsletter family who I love connecting with. So you can find out about that at AmandaDykes.com.
Very good.
I'm working on a novel that will release in summer of 2024. It takes place in Colorado. I'm very excited about it. It's a friendship story.
What time period?
It's 1930s and 1940s.
Okay.
They start out as pen pals, and these two girls grow as friends, and then the friendship turns into this mystery that they have to solve. I won't give away too much, but there's a little bit of a treasure hunt involved. Story of redemption, as all of my stories tend to be.
It's going to be beautiful. We were just inside, and a couple of other readers are here. And they were just talking about how amazing Whose Waves these are. So it's going to be beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, you can find all of that on the show notes as well. And Amanda, thank you so much for your story and for coming on the show. And here it is, nighttime.
Yes.
And goodbye, everyone. And we'll check you on the spoiler edition if you want to join us there.
Yes.
Bye.